Okay.
Okay, so
Somebody's entering.
We have two more people, but their grandchildren were arriving this afternoon from California to celebrate Christmas because everybody was sick. So we lost Carol and Leo. I would have loved to hear you.
And Mary Atke, who is usually here, has a meeting every third Sunday of the month. So she's our usual guru if there's technical issues. So I'm glad we have a couple of young people here. And can we ask everybody to turn off their phone? And there's a couple of people coming in, so we'll wait. There's Sansum SM A12. I don't know who you are. And we have an iPad, and we have Sadhu and Imma. So these are people who are not on video or on audio. So they will be.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah.
Vivian.
Carol Jenkins had said that some people from her church might be joining us. So
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
advertise it at our church for the last couple of weeks. so-
great,
Okay, good.
great.
Then I don't know.
So we'll wait a couple of minutes.
Yesterday's video start video.
Evan,
Hello.
Erin's church is Blessed Sacrament in Newark. Is that correct, Erin?
Yes, that's correct.
Hello. You're identified as Samsung SM. Would you like to identify yourself by name? You're on mute also. Hello, Samsung.
I think they're yeah, they're
Samsung.
yeah, they're a new family at our church.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Oh, great.
Okay.
good.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And Imma, welcome. If you want to, here's Madeline and Walter Korfmacher. They're from Westfield, St. Helens Church, and they have they're in charge of the Peace and Social Justice Committee for St. Helens and Holy Trinity in Westfield. So just okay. So a lot of people several people are on mute. I hope that's by choice. If you're having any trouble and want to reach out, my number is 908-514-9321. It's fine if you want to remain off camera or mute, but if you want to get on, we probably have somebody who can help you. We have a few young people.
Somebody under 35.
Somebody under 25 who will be able to help with
My
it.
8-year-old granddaughter can do it in 3 moments.
Okay, so we have Carol's iPad.
Facility.
This must maybe Carol Jenkins. I'm not sure. Voice of the Faithful.
Facility, can you hear? Facility?
Yes, yes.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. We welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, there you go. Welcome.
Carol.
Oh, Carol.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol. We're glad you're back.
Hi, Carol. Welcome.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
And I'm going to thank Carol before we even start for connecting us to Erin Sweeney and the people in her parish. Welcome all. I'm substituting as the welcoming person for Voice of the Faithful because Carol Rogers' family decided to come this week and from California because they couldn't get here at Christmas time because of illness. So usually Carol does the welcoming. But for those of you who don't know, Voice of the Faithful is a group of Catholics who are concerned about our church. And we meet regularly to learn about our past, discuss our future, and we do have liturgies every other Sunday, the first and the third Sunday of the month. So we give gifts, we rejoice and give thanks for all the gifts we have, and we strive for truth and integrity in holding everyone, including ourselves, accountable for the way we live in our Christianity. This program is part of our yearly theme. Each year we choose a theme, and this year our theme is the journey to civilization. Our first meeting was held in November. This is the second one in the series. And the first one, we began with discussing chapter 7 in the Theology of Migration by Daniel Grudy. He's from Notre Dame. And the chapter was called The Bodies of Refugees and the Body of Christ. And in that chapter, he talks about this incident at Lampedusa, a little island off Italy, where there were thousands of Somalian refugees who were shipwrecked. There was no media coverage, nothing was said about these thousands of people who died, in contrast to when people die in earthquakes. Somebody referred to them as nobodies. And Francis said, each refugee is a somebody and is connected to everyone. And so we have taken this up as our challenge for this year. And today we're having this panel where we have 4 people. One person is representing 2 people. And each person will introduce themselves, and then, oh good, Vivian can now hear, thank you. Each person will introduce themselves and then tell us a little bit about their role. But I'm going to first introduce, Charlie is going to play a song to just get us in the spirit for a moment.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children tell how hearts learn to forgive. Built of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true. Stand as witness
So all are welcome. And we will start with Erin Sweeney, who will be the moderator of this panel. Can I ask everybody to mute yourselves except the speakers? Erin Sweeney is a 2022 Equal Justice Works Fellow, sponsored by Microsoft Corporation and Sidney Boston LLP. She works as an immigration attorney in Newark, New Jersey, in the Office of Kids in Need of Defense, KIND, a nonprofit organization that represents unaccompanied minors in immigration proceedings and processes. Before joining KIND, Erin held multiple nonprofit leadership roles in Newark, including 7 years as the executive director of education, nonprofit schools that can Newark. She was previously a U.S. Foreign Service officer, where she served as a consular office in Lagos, Nigeria, a political and human rights officer in La Paz, Bolivia, a passport education supervisor in New York City, and held short-term assignments in Washington, D.C., Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Berlin, Germany. Erin graduated summa cum laude from Rutgers Law School with an immigration certificate in May of 2022. She was an intern at KIND's Newark office in September of 2021. She has a master's in American Studies from Rutgers University, Newark, a master's in public policy, urban planning from Harvard Kennedy School, and a bachelor in public policy with honors from the University of Chicago. Erin is licensed to practice law in New Jersey. That's quite a resume. And then we have Evan Meade. He is an assistant supervisor in the Asylum Application Department in the Adams administration in New York City. He is a graduate of Indiana University with a bachelor's in International Global Studies and a minor in Spanish. Katherynn Correal is an American citizen raised in Colombia and America. She has accompanied relatives through the process of obtaining citizenship and is a friend of Alejandro, who she will tell Alejandra's story. And Alejandra is the mother of 3 who left Guatemala with 3 sons to come to America. So I will now start with Erin, and Erin, you can tell us about whatever you'd like.
Sure. Okay, great. And then do you want me to pass it to Evan after that?
Yes,
Yep.
pass it on to Evan, and then Evan can pass it on to Katherynn.
Perfect. Okay, that sounds great. So first, I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity.
Excuse me, Erin. Peg, can you ask everybody to mute? Felicity, please mute yourself. It's a lot of background noise. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay.
We're good. Okay. So I just wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity. I am an attorney, so I have to give disclaimers, especially as this is recorded. So first, everything I'm discussing today is for educational purposes and does not constitute legal advice. So individuals seeking legal advice should talk to an attorney. And second, I do currently work as an attorney at KIND, Kids in Need of Defense, but I'm here today in my personal capacity. So I am not representing KIND at this meeting. All the views I express today are my own and in no way represent the views or policies of KIND. Okay, disclaimers aside, now I can actually get to my remarks. So I did prepare a few remarks, and the first part I just want to say is kind of a contextual piece. I did go ahead and buy the Theology of Migration book and read the chapter you guys read, and really, really appreciate it. I got a lot out of it. So I just wanted to say a couple remarks as an immigration attorney, why this spoke to me and why this approach you're taking is so important, I think. And then I can get into the role of the immigration attorney. So just a few remarks. So I'm someone who's very dedicated to my Catholic faith, but I found myself throughout much of my life challenged and frustrated by what I see as the failings of the Catholic Church in regard to many social justice issues. Though the church has been a huge force for good in social justice with Catholic charities and nuns on the bus and other types of efforts that are out there, especially to fight for those that are most vulnerable, I find that the church as a whole has been kind of misguided and fallen away from that social justice mission that God designed for us. And I think this immigration discourse that's been happening, especially in recent years, is probably one of the best examples of this. And so I'm very grateful to hear that your organization exists. It gives me hope that I'm not alone here as a Catholic, that there are other socially minded, forward-thinking members of our community. And so I wanted to just comment on why I think this approach is so useful and so powerful. As was mentioned, I used to be a foreign service officer, and one of my jobs was I was a visa officer. I sat in the window and I issued a lot of visas, but I also denied a lot of visas. And I did that when I was like 24, 25 years old. And so I'm sitting in this window in Nigeria all day long interviewing people who want to come to my country, people who are older than me, more established than me, people that are just like me, young, have nothing really tying them to Nigeria. And I denied them all day long. Yet there I was. I mean, the hypocrisy of it was blatant. I was in their country. They didn't ask me to come. Like, I just came because I could get a visa because I'm American. And I started thinking like how bizarre the system is, that we have a system in which based on the country of your birth and to much degree your social status, you get to come or not come to the United States based on what a 24-year-old says during your 10-second interview. And so, but I would tell myself like, well, I didn't write the laws, I'm just implementing it. And they always told us in training to remind ourselves that a visa to the US is a privilege and it is not a right. So I would tell myself that every day, like, you know, I'm not really ruining their lives. So that was kind of the beginning of my career. And after I left that career and settled in Newark, word got out to a lot of schools in Newark that I know something about visas. So I started getting a lot of inquiries from students who are without documentation, asking for advice. And it started to really make me realize, I think I need to do this for a living. I think I need to go back to school, get a law degree, and try to do this. And also not just because there's so much need and I had this weird, bizarre knowledge around visas, but also because I saw the growing immigration crisis as a real civil rights issue for our time. And it's only gotten worse since then. So I attended law school in the evening. I'd work full time and then go to school at night just to study immigration law. And so I've been really happy at Kind because I have the opportunity to do that, working with children as young as like 3 and 4 years old to try to help them through their immigration processes. But one thing I've noticed since I started this job is when I talk to people, especially around here in Newark, and I say what I do, they go, oh, wow, you're really doing God's work, right? I hear that all the time. I heard it yesterday. I hear it all the time. But when I talk to my Catholic conservative relatives and other very devout Catholics that I know, a lot of times I don't get that response. What I get is, well, as long as you're just helping the legal ones, you're not helping the illegal ones, right? And I'm always taken back. I mean, I shouldn't be, I should know better, but I'm always taken back because I'm thinking, how is a human illegal, right? Like you're a human being. You cannot possibly be illegal. Like we are not legal or illegal people. And so the terms like illegal and alien are like these terms that are being used to kind of dehumanize and make us an us versus them. And for some reason, I get this a lot when I talk to very devout Catholics and very Christian people. So reading this book was so helpful because it was like, oh, okay, here's some actual like theology behind why this is not the right approach, like why we should not be deeming people illegal or seeing them, I wrote down exactly what you were just talking about, Peg, the nobodies versus somebodies. I was really struck with some of the stuff that Pope Francis said and what was written about in there, that people have a right to move elsewhere in search of more dignified lives. And that doesn't have to just be because they're fleeing war or persecution. It could be because they want a better life. This idea that the fear of meaninglessness is something we all have a fear of, that we all want our lives to be something. We want to have some tangible or significant impact in the world. And so I was really struck by all of that. And I really appreciate this book for that reason. And I think it really gets back to why this really is God's work, doing immigration work. So I thank you for that. And so with that in mind, I kind of want to talk about what the role of the immigration attorney is in immigration in general, and specifically in regards to asylum and what we're seeing at the southern border, because I think that's really where we're seeing the most attention right now. And not just the southern border, but then New York City, which I think Evan will talk about quite a bit. So immigration attorneys, what do we do? Our role is to assist immigrants with immigration processes. That's kind of obvious, but what does that mean? Well, for a lot of my colleagues in immigration law, they're not really dealing with the border or asylum because there are still thousands of people, tens of thousands of people applying for visas every day, tourist visas, work visas, student visas, immigrant visas. They're trying to reunite with family members here in the US, or they have employment opportunities here. So a lot of immigration attorneys only do visas and that kind of work. But there are also people who have entered the US without a visa, or who entered with a visa and become out of status. They stay too long, they change what they're doing while they're here, and they're seeking assistance to adjust their status or to gain a status. And that's where we really see a lot of these humanitarian-based options like asylum, which we hear a lot about. But there's also a lot of other options that are special visas that have been designated for the most vulnerable. So in our case, we work a lot on a special visa for children that have been abandoned or neglected. There's visas for women who have been victims of violence, general victims of crime, victims of human trafficking. There's a whole bunch. And attorneys, that's our job when we're intaking a new client, to see their story and kind of figure out what are the options, and maybe there's multiple that somebody could apply for to try to get some sort of relief. The other thing that we do as lawyers is we go to court. We represent people in immigration court. And our goal there is to get the best outcome for the immigrant, which for most people is going to be a green card. But sometimes it's actually leaving the country without having something on their record. So that's another thing we work towards. And if the person has a criminal issue that comes up, that's also our role, is to try to minimize the impact that the criminal history is going to have on the immigrant. That could be anything from like jaywalking, and people actually get put into removal because of jaywalking or speeding tickets, or it could be murder, right? Like that happens too. So that is our role as immigration attorneys. So it's very, it's a variety of things that we do. When we talk about people who are here without documentation, there's kind of two main ways to look at it. One is what we call entering without inspection, or EWI. These are individuals who come into the US, but they're not detected. So they sneak in somehow, they're not detected, and they settle here in New Jersey, they settle wherever. And their goal really is to never be detected, because as long as they're not detected and immigration doesn't know they're here, they can kind of live their lives under the radar. They don't have work permits. They can't, apply for certain kinds of benefits. They're not eligible for benefits. They can't travel out of the country. And they have to live with a constant fear that they could be picked up. Like there could be a raid at their workplace or at their school, or they could get arrested for driving without a license or something, and then they could be put in proceedings. The other population of individuals may have been detected. So either they came in with a visa and they've overstayed the visa, or they entered and they were detected at the border. Sometimes they volunteer themselves. You'll see the lines of people at the border, like they're coming in to claim asylum. So they want to be known. Others get caught at the border. And so when those individuals enter the US, immigration basically asks them, do you have a fear of returning home? And if they say yes, then immigration is bound to let them in. They might be in detention, they might get released from detention. It just kind of depends on different factors. They're given something called an A number. It's like your identification number. It stands for alien number because they are called aliens under the law. The A number is the number they use for the rest of their proceedings. And they'll be given a critical fear screening. It's basically an initial test or initial interview that's like to prove that they have some real fear of going back to their country. But then they have to wait to go through an asylum process. So at this point, most of the individuals at the border, because there's so many coming in, will be given a hearing notice. It's called notice to appear. That says at the bottom, the date and time of your hearing is to be determined because there's just so many people coming in. They don't have a date or time ready for them. So it's up to that individual to continually update immigration when their address changes, which you just entered the US. You don't really have an address. So you got to figure out a way to get your new address, whatever that is, to immigration. And you can also call a 1-800 number every week to see if a hearing has been set for you. If you missed your hearing, if you never found out you had a hearing because you didn't call the number, you didn't update your address, they're going to issue a deportation order for you. So you could be living in the US for years with a deportation order, have no idea because you didn't know that you missed your hearing. So it's really important to go to the hearing. And often when you're released, you'll be required to check in with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're the part of Homeland Security that does the deportations, just to show them that you're still here and you're still paying attention. So, but they don't always really know if you have a hearing either. So it's like everybody's in silos. So you kind of have to keep on top of all of these parts of the government. So I think Evan will probably talk about what cities are doing to try. But one of the things that's important to note about asylum is you can only apply for asylum within 1 year of entering the US. So individuals who are crossing the border have 1 year from the time they enter the US to apply. A lot of people don't know that. And if they don't apply within that year, they lose the opportunity to file for asylum. So they must file for asylum within a year. They might be waiting 10 years, 12 years for their court hearing. It just kind of depends on when they get a hearing. So in the meantime, they are just kind of waiting for their opportunity to make their claim. They can affirmatively apply for asylum and try to get an interview in an asylum office, but a lot of the asylum offices right now are really behind. The Newark one hasn't opened since 2020 because they're only interviewing people at the border, or Ukrainians or Afghans. So nobody else is getting interviews right now. So you could be waiting years for your day to claim asylum. Once you've applied for asylum, you have no work permit at this time, right? So you're coming, you've applied, you have to wait 6 months from the time you applied before you can apply for your work permit. So what do you do for 6 months? You don't have housing, you don't have food, you have to figure it out, and then you can apply for your work permit and then get a work, a legal job and all of that. Keep in mind too, this whole process is in English. So there's that. And it's in legalese, right? So you have to figure out how to fill out these forms. If you don't have someone to help you, a lot of our immigrants may not have a higher education and definitely are not lawyers and may not understand what the forms are. So you really need an attorney. So this is where attorneys are very important, but you have to keep in mind a private immigration attorney will often charge an applicant a flat fee to do asylum. And I will tell you right now that those flat fees are generally, the lowest I've seen is $10,000. It's usually $15,000 or $20,000 for an asylum application. And that's upfront. So you've just entered the US, you owe $10,000 to the coyote or the guide who got you to the US. Your family back home is waiting for you to send remittances back because you've made it to the US. So you must be making a lot of money. And on top of that, now you have to pay for this attorney. The private attorney will do their best to get the thing in process, but again, they have to wait until there's an interview or a hearing. And so it's kind of a very tricky situation. And then there are nonprofits like us, but we all have long waiting lists to take new clients because there's just so many people that need cases, and these cases take a long time. And then of course there's other special visas. So you may be eligible for 3 or 4 types of things, but you have to figure out what money do you have to pay the attorney for that type, and how long will each take. Crimes of victim right now, that visa takes 10 years to process. So you're waiting a long time to get a status. If you have a hearing coming up, you have to pay the attorney more, right? Because now you need them to represent you in court, unless you get a nonprofit to represent you. But I do want to mention something about immigration court. we picture a court, right? So there's a judge, yes, there's a judge, and there's one side is the immigrant and the attorney if they have one. The other side is the government attorney. There's a court reporter, there's an interpreter. It looks like court. At the end of the day, immigration court is actually not court, okay? It is an office in the Justice Department. The judges are not judges the way we think of them. They are individuals who saw a job opening that said there's a judge opening position in Newark, and they applied. They just have to have legal degree and some legal experience. They don't even need immigration experience. They could have done eviction law before this. It doesn't matter. They apply for the job. If they get picked, they are employees of the Justice Department. So if you think about that, they work for the executive branch. The government employee for Department of Homeland Security works for the executive branch. And then you're the immigrant on the other side. So is it a fair process? It's the jury's out on that. These judges are employees of the Justice Department. They report to the Attorney General. So whenever the president changes and whenever the Attorney General changes, their directives change, their decisions change, how they adjudicate cases changes. Right now, everyone in the immigration field is freaking out a little bit because there's an election coming up and we're trying to get our cases through because depending on what happens in this election, everything's going to change in court. So it's not what you imagine a real court to be. It's very political. And the other thing that's important to note about immigration court is it's civil. So even though people are charged with a criminal infraction for entering without documentation, the process is a civil process. So what does that mean? Well, we all know if you go to criminal court, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. That is not what happens in civil proceedings. If you cannot afford an attorney, you don't get an attorney. So it doesn't matter if you're a 3-year-old child, you don't get an attorney. You have to represent yourself in court. And it happens all the time. And so the other problem is if you lose, you get deported. That's basically the penalty, which is considered a civil penalty, not a criminal penalty. It's considered the same as a fine in traffic court, but it's deportation. So you're ruining people's families. And an individual is 5 to 8 times more likely to win with an attorney. So again, you're back to this situation of needing to find someone. So what does this mean? It means the system is designed for immigrants to fail. I mean, that's essentially what it means. It's designed not to welcome those seeking safety, as is required by international law. It is designed to be exclusionary. And this, there's a long history of law in the US that is exclusionary, from the 1880s with the Chinese Exclusion Act through the Quota Acts in the 1920s to even the 1965 Act, which got rid of quotas, but changed the whole way that we do our immigration system, so that it basically means the only legal ways to come to the US is to have a US citizen, close family member sponsor you. And unless you have one of those, or you have some very unique talent, there is no legal way to come here. So this brings me back kind of to where I started, which is just to say, when my family's asking me, why can't they just come legally? It just demonstrates to me a complete lack of knowledge of what the system is. What does that mean? And when my family follows up by saying, well, your grandparents came here legally, I love to point out to them that that's not the case, that there was no legal or illegal for Irish immigrants in the early 1900s. They got on a boat and they came here. Nobody asked them to come here. They didn't ask permission. They came. And that law changed. If they tried to do that today, they would be undocumented, which is why the Irish are actually one of the highest within their immigrant group, most undocumented populations in the US. If you walk into most Irish pubs in New York City, I guarantee you, if you work for CBP, if you work for the Department of Homeland Security, half the staff there will run away because they are not here with documentation. So that is one of the things I just wanted to highlight, is that I think when we're talking to even elected officials, they have no concept of what it means to be legal or to apply legally. And most Americans have no idea how hard it is to go through this process or to find a way to adjust into a status. And I think that within the context of theology and everything you guys are doing, I think it's really important for us to add that layer of being Catholics, of trying to see immigrants as part of us, that we're all part of the same community, that we're all brothers and sisters in God, and figure out how we can make sure that every person here feels like they are somebody, that they have the opportunity to seek a dignified, life, and seek out the same things that all of us want, which is just to live a great life and have all the same opportunities. So those are my comments to start, and I think I will pass it to Evan to tell us more about what he's seeing on the front lines in New York.
Hi everyone, welcome. So I also wanted to point out that I also was a kind intern at, what was that? I think summer of 2022. So I used to work there myself in Newark.
That's so great. I'll have
Yeah,
to tell
so
everyone. Okay.
that was a great time. But yeah, so to start, I'd like to say that I work for the NYC Asylum Application Help Center in New York. And I guess this was my first job coming out of college, and I found myself in a situation where I wanted to impact people's lives and dealing with my family being part of like from Peru, and I want to help out those like around me. So um during that time in the city, dealing with, oh my gosh, I'm like nervous right now. Sorry guys. Um sorry. Um so I guess going to asylum, those immigrants coming from South America or from around the world are coming through to the US looking for asylum and or TPS for the Venezuelans. Oh my gosh, I'm like freaking out right now. Sorry guys. One sec. Whew. Okay. So a lot of these people will think that they will qualify for asylum because of what happened in their country and what they're dealing with in their like Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, and Chile, etc. And a lot of what they deal with is general crime. And it's unfortunate for them that for asylum, general crime does not qualify them for asylum, because that could happen anywhere in this world, even though it happens a lot for them in their home country. So a lot of the lawyers that I work with will be like, this isn't enough for asylum, even though like a lot of them will deal with these problems like from general crimes from gangs and even their own government and the military. So I say a lot of the cases that I dealt with in New York will be part of like that general area of general crime where their cases will most likely not be accepted or will not be taken seriously by the court because of general crime issues, and that can happen anywhere, and that's basically what they'll say. And there's certain cases that will have more in depth of what happened to them, but a lot of these people will come in with the same stories of, this happened to me from the government mistreating me because of the protests that I took part in, and the gangs or the colectivos in Venezuela will I'd say the colectivos are like a paramilitary in Venezuela that are corrupt with the Venezuelan government. And they're basically like the gang, like armed force that will do these like crimes and general crime against the people to force them to vote for the current government. So it's unfortunate for them that general crime can happen anywhere in this world, but the US will take that as general crime and won't, and lawyers and won't take their cases seriously. And it sucks because lawyers will not want to deal with court, especially with those who have weak asylum cases, even though that what they're dealing with is horrible. And I guess it's just unfortunate for them because they think that what they've went through in their home country will, be enough for for asylum and to be able to stay here in the United States permanently because of how unstable their country is. And it's just sad to see that they have struggled in their own home country, and then they're also coming here without knowing anything the law or how life will be here, and they're also upset being here because the New York City shelters that they're put in, it's great that they're provided with this service, that a lot of the things that they're provided with are free, and but they still don't have work permits, like Erin said, and basically what they're doing all day is just finding work or attempting to find work under the table, and a lot of them are having trouble finding that work because companies or businesses don't want to take in those illegal immigrants because New York knows that a lot of the immigrants are finding jobs like under the table. So I guess for them it's been really hard because of what happens there and what happens here, and they're not able to well, their expectation was to come to the United States to be able to work and to provide for their family, to keep them safe and feed them and clothe them. But the reality of what happens or what they thought would be the United States is completely different than what they imagine. So I guess the immigrants coming into the United States need help of like understanding the law and how they will be incorporated into the United States when they first get here. I guess one of the main problems is that a lot of them don't speak English and aren't. Some of them are illiterate and some of them don't understand like much of their own language. So one main point that I would like to say is that a lot of these people will receive notices from USCIS or from the court, and they won't understand what they're being put into, or like for biometrics appointment or for an asylum interview or a court hearing notice. So I guess fine, it wouldn't even have to be a lawyer, but there should be people that help these immigrants or help the immigrants deal with the process of asylum or TPS, and because those are the main two statuses besides a visa. But once they get into the United States, they should be, I don't know, not they should be guided through of how the immigration process is, so that they're not struggling and missing appointments, because if they miss an appointment for USCIS or the court, they're more likely to be deported. And then the I've actually dealt with this myself, but I've done a motion to change, or no, motion to reopen, so that their cases will be reopened with the court, and most of them will be upset because they didn't know that they had court, and they're more like disappointed with the court system and the government because they don't know what's going on because of their language or the language barrier, and they don't really understand English. And also they're expecting to have these lawyers to help them out, and there's a lot of immigrants in the United States, so there can't be a lawyer for every single one of them. So a lot of these immigrants won't have the money, as Erin was saying, they won't have the money to be able to pay the lawyer $10,000 to $20,000 for their asylum cases. So a lot of them are left on their own, and they come into my office claiming that they'll have a court hearing in a week or two, and they don't have a lawyer, even though that we have lawyers that work within my my organization. They're legally not able to represent the clients because of what the service we're providing them with. So I guess for them, it's been a journey, and for me, even for myself, I've learned a lot of how they're dealing with coming to the United States, and I guess their own lives back in their own country, and I guess how they're dealing with immigration or the law and the government here in the United States. So sorry, I had another thing to say. But yeah, so since the law has changed so that the Venezuelans are able to get TPS, which is temporary protected status in the United States, the Venezuelans are more likely to attain their work permit earlier than those for asylum, because it takes around like 8 to 10 months for those who apply for asylum to receive their work permit. So most of those applicants are not really doing much during the day, unless they have found work under the table. But a lot of them don't do a whole lot because of they don't have the ability to work. So those Venezuelans that are able to apply for TPS will be able to receive their work permit within around like a month or two of applying, because we are sending directly to USCIS their TPS application and their work permit. So where I moved to now with the new position that I have within the same organization, USCIS actually works alongside with me in the building itself. So we'll do their TPS and their work permit in my area of the building. It's actually in John Jay College, and then they will be sent over to USCIS for their biometrics appointment, and that'll usually go smoothly for them, and they'll leave and they'll receive more notices and stuff like that within like a month or two. And even though what we do for them is great, it's also free for them to apply through us, because it costs around like 500 plus or minus, but to apply for the work permit and the TBS. But for them to apply for free through our organization, they have to have a shelter letter. And one thing about the shelter letter is that some shelters are not that great with working with immigrants themselves, because they won't provide them with the shelter letters, or they won't update them on how to apply for asylum or how to apply for TBS and stuff like that. So I guess one thing that also could help the immigrants is have the shelters provide more information of how to guide them through their asylum or through their TBS, and whenever they receive notices, they'll help them understand what their notice is saying, because all the notices are in English. So they'll need assistance in understanding of how to go to these appointments, or how to do these requests that the government is asking for, and things like that. So and especially for TPS, if they don't provide enough evidence that they have been here since July of 2023 until now, USCIS will provide or request more evidence from the immigrant, and that will put the immigrant in a little bit of distress, because they won't really know what's going on, because they're requesting things that they don't really know what they're looking for and things like that. So it wouldn't even have to be a lawyer, but I guess somebody who speaks English and knows how to guide these people through their processes of TPS and asylum would be great for them, because the lawyers are requesting a lot of money. Even though there are pro bono lawyers that are assisting immigrants, all the immigrants are calling and requesting those who are pro bono, but there isn't a lot of them. There is more immigrants than there are pro bono lawyers, so it's very difficult for them to even take those cases. And also, lawyers are more likely to not take their cases for asylum, especially because most of them are considered weak, because they're, like I said earlier, they're dealing with general crime from the government, or the colectivos, the paramilitary that is corrupt with the government, and gangs and things like that. Even though that doesn't really happen here in the United States, it happens in those countries, but that just falls under general crime, which doesn't really qualify them for asylum. But overall, I'd say it's been great assisting those the immigrants that are coming here from plenty of different countries from South America. And I guess the relief that they have doing it for free, and me helping them and explaining to them like how to do these processes and things like that. Like once they leave our office, they're not allowed, not permitted, but we're not able to represent them or anything, so they won't really know what's going on after that. But I'll do my best in order to explain to them, what they receive from USCIS or from the government or from the court or even ICE. That's a very scary term for most of the immigrants. I mentioned ICE, and most of them are a little bit scared, but all the immigrants will have to deal with the court, ICE, and USCIS. So those are three different organizations that are completely different from one another, and they'll have to respond to notices and requests from them that they don't really know what's going on. So I guess like one of the major problems for them, like I was saying, is that they need assistance in guiding, or they need assistance and guidance through, their processes in the United States overall. But yes, that will be the end of my talk. My apologies. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Evan. Okay. So we'll turn this
Is
over.
it my turn? All right. Hello, everybody. So by looking at your names, I know a lot of you by name because of Mary, who's talked so much about you guys. All very good things. So even though I have helped family members with their processes, I did not know so many of the things that Erin and Evan mentioned. So I'm gonna just tell you a little bit about me. I'm 37 years old. I was born in Morristown, New Jersey. moved back to Colombia when I was 9 months old with my mom. Grew up there. Then when I was 11, an earthquake hit Colombia, the area where we're from, and my father passed away very tragically, leaving my mom with me, who was 11, and my sister, who was 9. But I was the only one who was born here. So I was the only one, but I guess by chance or because God needed it to be like that or whatever the reason is, I was born here. So when that happened, there was no work. There are a lot of bad things happening around the area where the earthquake hit. So I came back to live here with my one dad's sister, and my mom and sister went to try and get a visa. They were denied. Like Erin said, it's not very easy to do. So eventually my mom migrated to Spain, where they do not need a visa to go to. She migrated to Spain. I was here. So at one point, my sister was in Colombia. I was here, and my mom was in Spain. My sister stayed with my grandmother. It was like a year later when my sister was able to go to Spain when my mom was settled and doing better. But for 10 years, we were separated, all three of us, 3 different continents. But, you know, we went and traveled back and forth. I went to Spain. We met in Colombia. And when I graduated high school, from Morristown, my mom wanted me to move to Spain. But because I also am not a legal alien in Spain, school is extremely expensive. And I would not get any benefits because I'm not a citizen from Spain. So I came back, and then that's when I turned like 20, we decided that my mom wanted to see if she would be able to come here. So I put in whatever papers they needed. I didn't know anything like what I needed. I was 20 years old. I didn't know what I needed, but I went and got help from an office, paid them, and I sponsored my mom and my sister to become green card holders. So they've been here for 12 years now. They both have their green card. My mom actually became a US citizen a couple months ago. Hard, very, very, very hard. A lot of people also don't know that whole process, especially when you don't speak the language. But she did that, and now my sister is applying. She sent her application to get hers. But that's the part. And then I've been married for 11 years. So when I met my husband, who was also from Colombia, he came here with a student visa. But when eventually he really wanted the visa just to come. He never had the plan of going back because he also had lost his father at a very young age in a motorcycle accident. So there's no work there. You have to know somebody that knows somebody to have an actual okay job, even if you have a college degree. Just tough. So when he finally got his visa and then he was here, we got married 4 years after that, and he's now also a US citizen. But we went through the whole process of paying fees for whatever application you have to, whatever, to change the status, and then but only because I was a US citizen, that for whatever reason, I was just meant to be born here, I guess. So that's that. I'm now in nursing school. I have a 9-year-old daughter with my husband, who's in gymnastics right now. She's inside, I'm in the car. So, you know, just hard. One day, or the year the pandemic started, so that January 2020, I was walking so whoever's familiar with the Rockaway area, I was walking from driving from the Rockaway Mall to my house. It was like 19 degrees out, and I see a woman walking, holding a boy's hand and pulling a stroller. And I was like, oh my God, it's freezing out. What is this woman doing? So I stopped. I asked her to see if she wanted me to give her a ride. Obviously she was hesitant and scared, but I guess she knew that she needed to get in. So she got in the car with the kids. So it was 2 boys. She now has 3, but it was 2 boys. They got in, they were very scared. The little one was 2 years old and the older one was 8. Freezing cold, not very well covered. They had like a little sweater, like nothing. So I asked her where she was going, and she said she was going to the train station in Dover. And it's not a far walking distance, but walking in 19-degree weather with 2 little kids, it's freezing. So I drove them to the train station, but the little one kept saying he was hungry. And then we found out the train wasn't coming for another 45 minutes. So I said, I can drive you to get like, I was thinking of like warm soup, like warm, like Colombian food or something, but they wanted McDonald's. So I said, I'll drive you to McDonald's. So I drove them to McDonald's. And this is when this woman, who was 24 at the time, started telling me her story of how she crossed the border. I had never met anybody like directly that had told me the story little by little of it's something that even if you watch a movie or a documentary, it's not even close to what they really go through. So she tells me that she had migrated maybe not even a year ago when I met her. 9 months, 10 months ago, she had been here. So she said that the father of her 2 children, she would abuse her sexually, physically, mentally, verbally, everything. But because I guess the culture, the ignorance, and all, any way you want to think about the ignorance, she never really could seek help or assistance from her parents, because they're like, it's your husband and it's your husband and that's it. So she, I guess, has a brother who's a little bit better off. I think she said he's a civil engineer, but he doesn't even, he's way older than her. So she reached out to him and she said, I can't do this, or one of us is going to be dead. One of my kids or myself. I guess he had beaten her so bad that he got arrested, and she had gone out of the hospital. And she said to her brother, I can sell everything and leave, get a coyote to leave, but I don't have enough for the little one. So if you adopt him from me, that's like more than helping me. But she was willing to like make sure the little boy was okay with her brother, but she knew she couldn't stay back with both of them. So the brother said, no, it's okay. I'll help you. I'll give you the rest of the money. So she said within 2 weeks, she sold everything and was on her way. I guess the brother and her contacted a man. I guess they paid extra money so that they would be in a better position when crossing, than also because of being a female with 2 little kids. So they paid a little more. I don't know how much. She never told me how much she paid. But she left. It took her 17 days from the moment she left till the day she crossed over. But I guess the way they had arranged for it to happen was to only be bus, car, truck, but never walking or swimming or, crossing that big river. So it took them, it took them 10 days to cross just Mexico. I guess just 2 days a couple days crossing Guatemala, but 10 days crossing Mexico. The kids were getting dehydrated. They would treat them like animals, even though they were paying more to only be in cars, but they would treat them badly. And I guess she remembers something very clearly that because I talked to her last night just to like verify all the information. And she said that what she remembers so clear is that crossing Mexico, all the food was so spicy that the kids wouldn't eat. So all they ate was like chips, cookies, or whatever they could get at gas stations, and Gatorade. They drank so much Gatorade and water, but they had diarrhea. Like they were so dehydrated from not being really eating, I guess, what they needed. A 2-year-old, a 1.5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So she said when she finally got to, but thankfully she never was afraid of like, never felt like they were gonna rape her, because you see a lot of, or hear people saying that they get raped or they get separated from her children. She never did, but I guess it's because she paid that extra amount of money for her and her kids. So when they finally got to the border, she crossed by California. I don't know, Mexicali, she said, but I don't know where in the border that is really. First, they set for the 7-year-old to climb up a pole, she describes it, jump onto a wall, and then jump off. Then they said, you have to do it and we'll throw the baby over. So she said, no, I can't do it. And they're like, that's the only way you're going to do it, because you can't, like, you have to do it this way. So she climbed over, jumped, and then they grabbed her little baby boy by the arm and flew him across the wall. And she caught him, and then they handed themselves in to the, I guess, immigration or police, border police, I don't know. So that was 6 years ago. Now, I guess 2 years ago, she met a man. So I met her then, before the pandemic hit. I helped her because I was like, I could not believe that. I was like, I was supposed to meet this woman. I never take this way, but I was supposed to meet her. Like, I need to do something. I need to, whatever it is that I can do to help her, even if it's food or whatever it is, I'm going to help her. So I talked to a bunch of my friends, my husband's family, my family, so when she crossed in California, she was at a friend's house who could only have her for like a week. Then she had a family member it was her ex-husband's family member in Hackettstown, who said, you can come, I'm gonna get you a room to live in with your 2 boys, but everybody has to, everybody's on their own here. Like nobody can carry you through the whole process. You just, I got you a room, you're welcome to pay rent and stay there. So she was there, but then she was cleaning houses. Then the pandemic hit. She got a little house where, from what she told me, she kept seeing men coming in and out of this one place. And then she found out later that they had like prostitutes, little like younger girls, that the owner of the house or whoever lived in the house was using these girls as prostitutes, and she was renting one of the rooms with her 2 sons. So that's when the pandemic started. So she lost her job, also under the table, because obviously she was seeking asylum. But like you guys said, it's a long process. And she was just working under the table, cleaning houses or at McDonald's. But I guess there's a thing that I'm sure you guys, Erin probably knows about it. There's like fake papers that people get. It's probably, you can even say that you know about it. So you pay a person, they print out like things that look real, I guess, a green card and a social security card, and they use that to get whatever job, whatever work they can get. So she did that when she could. Then she met a man who is like 22 years older than her, lied and painted a pretty picture of like, oh, I'm a US citizen, we can, have a beautiful life, got her pregnant, and then never to be seen again. The only thing he did was he got a lease for an apartment in Rockaway, where she still is now. And she's comfortably now not living in a room with 2 boys, but in a little apartment, which is better than, I guess, what she was used to. So she had a little baby boy. Terrible. It's like she wanted to have an abortion, but she couldn't. He denied because he said, it's not my baby, all kinds of things. But now the baby's 1.5 years old. She works. So she eventually, I think like 3 months ago, She got her working permit, which she cried so much. She called me and she was so happy and excited. Got her working permit and then went and got her social security card. Then the boys got their social security cards in the mail. And then her mom asked for a visa and she got it. So she's visiting her now here, the mom. And, you know, that's what she's doing now. She's kind of just waiting for a green card or whatever. I don't know what comes next with that, but at least now she legally works. She's working at Walmart at night. The 3 kids stay home alone now with the grandma, I guess with grandma that's visiting. Hopefully she'll change her shift to day shift after, but that's what she's doing now. But that's all I know, like the legally part of it, like when I sponsored my mom and my sister and my husband, that's, I guess, how you do it legally because of a US citizen. But I'm saying, that's all I know about immigration. That's it.
Thank you so much, Katherynn. And now
Thank you.
we'll turn this over to Erin, who will continue the discussion with questions for Evan or Katherynn. And it's up to you, Erin.
Yeah, so I could ask them some questions. I'm curious if anybody out there has questions because I don't know how late the session goes, and I want to make sure we're being responsive to the questions or thoughts or reflections that all of you have. So I don't know if anyone out there has questions. Mary. Just make sure you unmute. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I just want to say I had no idea, and I have a little idea from working with refugees who come through an agency, but I had no idea the horror of this, what you have told us, what Evan told us. It's impossible. I didn't know every connection, the political connection, everything that you talked about. I just can't imagine how inhuman this is. And I wish everyone could hear this particular session. I really think it's terribly important because if some of us don't know it that have been interested, I can't imagine what other people. So when, just what you said, when they say, oh, let them come and pull themselves up with the bootstraps, my relatives did from Ireland and Italy and all this. If they really knew what the story was, they wouldn't be saying those things. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just say one thing too that is confusing when we talk about refugees versus asylees. People ask me all the time the difference. And you mentioned working with refugees or with a group that settles refugees. Refugees and asylees are essentially the same idea. It's just about where you apply. So refugees have applied overseas and they go through a tremendous vetting process that takes several years, and then they get matched with the US and they get settled in the US, and with them comes benefits. They get connected with a refugee resettlement agency who finds them an apartment, meets them at the airport, gets them settled, and they have some financial benefits, but those don't last very long. So they do have a short window in which they have to figure out housing, long-term housing and jobs and all that stuff. But it's a great system in the sense that they come with a status and they're on track for their processing. Asylees are essentially the same concept. It's the same definition to apply, but they're already here in the US. So that's why all these folks that are applying for asylum, they have to enter the US first, and then they claim asylum when they enter. But they don't have any of the legal processes. They don't have money attached to them. There's no agency waiting to welcome them. So it is a difficult situation. And honestly, the US right now with refugees, we really just resettle refugees from like the Middle East. We have a special program for Ukraine. We have special programs for certain countries where we have some investment politically, or there's some reason, or the people look like me, and so we want them. We don't really settle refugees from like South and Central America. We do settle from Africa. We have some refugee programs in Africa, but again, very, very hard to qualify. So yeah.
I also have another thing to add. some of the problems that the immigrants are going through is that they'll receive fake USCIS notices. I've seen them go around where it'll look exactly like a notice coming from USCIS, but it's a fake. It's a scam.
Oh, wow.
They'll request money from these people, and they'll think it's real because why wouldn't they believe a USCIS notice that looks exactly like other notices that their friends or the other people that are living in a shelter get? And then also on top of that, they'll also receive emails saying that, oh, I'll represent you in court, things like that, but it's not a real lawyer, it's a fake lawyer. They'll be like, oh, if you send me 2,000 right now, I'll represent you. And a lot of the people will be scammed because they'll have a court hearing in 2 weeks or a week or in a few days, and they're desperate for a lawyer to represent them in court. And then they'll receive these emails saying that, oh, I'll represent you, but in reality, there's a bunch of people that are scamming and taking the money of the immigrants that are desperate for lawyers, and they don't really know what's real and what's not. So I've advised plenty of clients and that they have to be careful of people that are trying to scam you and people that are trying to take your money, because people are smart enough to realize that the immigrants are going through a hard time, and that they're desperate for any sort of help, and that help is coming through these emails that look completely real, and USCIS notices that look completely real, but in reality they're being scammed, or people are committing fraud. So
Uwe has a question. I don't know if I said your name right, but it's UVE. Can you ask?
Yeah. And I think it's been put in the chat.
Yes.
I could read it. I came in with a student visa, but currently I've fallen out of status for some reason. It's not still up to a year since I entered. Can I still apply for asylum? So, I can't give legal advice, but I can say generally, most people have to apply for asylum within a year of entering the US. So if it's been less than a year since you've entered the US, not since you've fallen out of status, but within a year since you've entered the US, you can file for asylum. It's a Form 589. And you could fill it out kind of without an attorney. You can fill it out kind of bare bones. And then when it's time to actually really apply, you would put your packet together. But the thing is, and just to add on what Evan was saying earlier, asylum is very, very hard to qualify for. So it can't be general crime, as Evan mentioned. In order to qualify for asylum, you have to be able to prove that you are being persecuted by somebody in your home country on account of either your race, your religion, your national origin, your oh my God, what is it? Race, religion, national origin, particular social group, which is kind of challenging to explain, but basically like some characteristic that's innate to you that you should not have to be able to change. Like if you're LGBTQ, or if you're a woman in Africa and they're coming after you for female genital mutilation and you're trying to avoid it, things like that could apply. I guess the last one's
it's political opinion.
Political opinion. Thank you. Oh my God. Yeah. Political opinion. So you have to prove that you're being persecuted on account of one of those categories, and that the person persecuting you is either the government or is a private actor, but the government is unwilling and unable to control that actor. Okay. You have to prove all of those elements in order to be successful with asylum. So what a lot of people are doing is they're applying for asylum, but as Evan mentioned, a lot of the cases are very weak because they're unable to show one or many of those elements. And so essentially you apply for asylum, you'll get your work permit eventually, and then you can keep working. And then until it's time for your interview for the asylum, you could just kind of keep living here, but you would have to anticipate that if it's a weak claim, you'll most likely lose the asylum. And at that point you would have to leave the country, or in the meantime, try to find another way to adjust status. Like if you marry a US citizen, there's different ways to adjust status. So yes, I always encourage people to apply for asylum if they think they have a real claim, if they think they qualify for asylum, and it has to be within a year of entering. There's some exceptions to the 1 year. It's usually stuff like you're a child that entered alone. So the kids that we represent, they can apply after a year. But there's very few exceptions. So you should get it in. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. I see Bebe. Is that how you say it? Bebe? Sorry. Oh, wait. I think you're on mute though, Bebe.
Bernice.
Bernice. Okay. There you go.
When they're denied, are they taken right from the office and put on a plane, or what do they do? Do they have some time to stay here, or what?
Yeah, it really depends. So if they go, so in some cases they're allowed to apply and get an interview in an asylum office, which is really, especially children get asylum office interviews. It's really great because it's just like an office. There's no glass, there's no judge, there's nothing, and they tell their story. And if the asylum officer grants asylum at that stage, they move on. If the asylum officer denies it, it gets referred to the immigration court. So they usually would get a second try at getting it. But usually at the court, at the point when the judge denies it, they have, I think it's 21 days or 30 days to file an appeal. So if they have an attorney, the attorney will almost always file an appeal as long as the client can pay for the appeal. And the appeal will buy a few more years because appeals take forever right now because there's such a backlog. So the attorney would file an appeal based on some kind of mistake in the processing or some kind of oversight or something that wasn't explained by the judge or something like that. It goes to the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is a political body of people that make decisions on these. Depending on who the president is, will determine if you're going to get approved or not. Although honestly, right now, very few appeals are being approved. So it's kind of impossible. And then at that process, that will probably take about 3 years or so. If you get denied there, then you could take it to the federal court system, the real courts, to the Third Circuit here in New Jersey or depending on the state. And that would take a couple years. But you'd really have to have something that went wrong, like some kind of procedural thing that you can point to, like the judge didn't listen to testimony from the expert witness or, something. And you would have to then the federal court would make their decision. They're not going to say, oh, you get asylum. They'll just say, oh, it has to go back to the immigration court for it to be reheard because there was a mistake. And then you probably lose again. So you can continue to go through this process if you have unlimited money to pay for the attorneys for each of these processes. Otherwise, if you're not going to appeal it when you lose in the immigration court, you generally get an order that is a deportation order. They want you to voluntarily leave, like you should take it upon yourselves to book tickets and head out. Do they follow up? Not always. So there's a lot of people living here with deportation orders, but then you're in a position where when you do finally get caught, if it happens, it's a much worse situation because you did not leave. And then if you try to enter again, it's near impossible to be able to ever adjust. So, generally, if you lose the immigration court, it's advisable to depart. Yeah, but they're not going to like in that moment. The only exception would be if you're if you're someone who's detained because you have some kind of criminal history or something. I mean, once you lose, like ICE will gladly escort you to the plane. So yeah.
Who had a follow-up question?
I've seen Louise had a question for a while.
Who? Oh, Louise. Louise. Okay.
You want to go with Uve? Do you want to let Uve follow up and then I can ask?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So with his follow-up is for a friend, he's 20, he wants to get married. Can he go through the process despite his age? Yeah, I don't think there's a minimum age for marriage based to be, I don't know if he's in the US or not. If he's in the US already, basically, generally, if you're in the US and you're not documented and you get married to a US citizen, you can try to adjust your status, basically meaning to go from no status to a status. It depends on how you entered the country. If you entered the country with a visa, it means you were inspected when you entered the country. You'd be able to adjust status here in the US. If you entered without inspection, so what we talked about earlier, iwi, or you didn't have a status, you would actually have to fly back to your home country for the visa interview. Very risky because there's no guarantee you'll get the visa. So, they really should talk to an attorney in that case. If so that's if he's in the US and he's got a student visa. That's great. Yeah, so he could definitely get married. If the person's a US citizen or a legal permanent resident, they can file for an adjustment of status. And it's just a long legal process that costs a lot of money, but it can all be done in the US. Yeah. And then who is next? Louise?
Louise.
Yeah. Oh, you're on mute though, Louise.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Like everyone else, I'm learning a lot. We've talked about individuals. I'd like to ask a more systemic question. Do you think the bipartisan bill that's may or may not get passed, is that going to do any good? Or do we need to shoot for more?
Well, I mean, are you talking about like the border security stuff?
We're hiring 300 more caseworkers and 1,500 patrol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is about trying to prevent people from coming in, or trying to minimize the number of entered without inspection. It doesn't really get to what we've been talking about today. It's really just trying to prevent people from getting in, or get more people in that what we call expedited removal, where they're immediately deported as soon as they enter the US. I think it's really just an approach by the Democrats to try to show that they can be tough on border security,
Oh,
without actually really doing anything to solve the problem of everyone who's here already. What we really need is comprehensive immigration reform.
yes.
We need something to change the law. That law from 1965 that set up the 7 preference categories, that's really the law we still live with. And so again, like, there's very few options to immigrate to the US in a legal path. So and then I'll also tell you, some of those paths take a long time. If you're doing the brother or sister of a US citizen, it takes between, I think it's usually like 12 to 15 or to 20 years, depending on what country you're coming from, before you have your interview. So you both still have to be alive. You know, you both still want to do it. I mean, I had a lot of cases like that, where by the time the interview came up, one of the individuals had died. And so the visa expired, you know, that we couldn't move forward. And so they're sitting there waiting. They're doing it the right way, whatever that means. Waiting their 15 years while they're seeing everybody just kind of crossing the border in the meantime. It's very difficult until we have some kind of immigration reform that changes how people can come here. It's going to be.
I heard an NPR, this might be for Evan too. I heard an NPR interview where some advocate was saying, Mayor Adams, sorry, was calling on Governor Hochul to shorten that 6-month waiting period to get a work permit. He said they had a bunch of men at a shelter. He said they want to work, you know, there's dock work and whatever, they could get a job. Is that at all realistic, or is that a federal law?
Federal law.
So he was punting to Hochul to.
Yeah. I don't think any city or state's going to be able to change that. It's the federal system. And like Evan said, so it's 6 months after you apply for asylum, you can apply for the work permit. And then, as Evan mentioned, you still have to wait to actually get the work permit. So it could be another, what did you say, Evan? You're seeing like 7 months?
It's like 8 to 10 months though.
Oh, good Lord.
Like 100, they can apply for the work permit 150 days after the court receives their asylum application. And then that's also another thing that they struggle with, counting the 150 days, because they'll receive these notices that the court received their that the court received their asylum application, but they don't know what that means because it's all in English. So they won't really know when to apply for the work permit, and then they'll wait like the extra month or 3 months for their work permit to actually get back to them. So it takes like 8 to 10 months for them to actually receive their work permit from the government.
Okay, I have to interrupt here. It is 5 minutes to 6 and we are supposed to go till 6. So I suspect that this could go on for hours and hours, and maybe we could think about doing another session on this. But I want to thank Erin for sharing all that you did, and Evan and Katherynn has gone, but you certainly gave us the message that each of you is treating people like somebody, and that all these people coming to you are having a place, even though it may be a drop in the bucket. They are treated like human beings. And that is what we want. You know, Erin asked the question in the beginning, how is any human being illegal? You know, we're all children of God. How can they be treated this way? But I do know this is a complex issue that doesn't have a lot of resolution at this point. And it's something that we really have to look at as something that's evolving, but needs each of us to do our part. So thank you all for the presentation. Thank you for participating. And if you are interested in any of our Voice of the Faithful programs, which will be follow-ups to this subject, you can go to the Voice of the Faithful New Jersey. We have several programs coming up. Daniel Grudy, who wrote the book, The Theology of Migration, will be speaking in April. And then we have two sisters down at the border who will be talking to us about their experience in September. So thank you all. And Charlie, you will be playing a song.
You want to hear a little more music? Sure.
Yes, yes, I think it's
If
a
you
great
do.
end.
I feel like people had questions. and not getting answered. There should be a way of seeing it. Yeah. For the same.
Here in this place, new light is streaming. Now is the darkness vanished away. See in this space our fears and our dreamings brought here to you in the light of this day. Gather us in the lost and forsaken. Gather us in the blind and the lame. Call to us now and we shall awaken. We shall arise at the sound of our name. We are the young, our lives are a mystery. We are the old who yearn for your face. We have been sung throughout all of history, called to be light to the whole human race. Gather us in the rich and the haughty, gather us in the proud and the strong. Give us a heart so meek and so lowly, give us the courage to enter the song. Here we will take the wine and the water, here we will take the bread of new birth. Here you shall call your sons and your daughters, call us anew to be salt for the earth. Give us to drink the wine of compassion, give us to eat the bread that is you. Nourish us well and teach us to fashion lives that are holy and hearts that are true.
I just want to thank Erin so much for, agreeing to do this. I would say about 70% of our parish are immigrants, right, Erin? And so I think this was a very apropos conversation, and it should be, we should do this again soon. Okay, thank you.
Hey, thank you for this. It was extraordinary.
Mhm.
Given us so much to think about.
Yes, thank you. Mary,
And thank you,
you're on-
Evan.
Like there are more
Mary, you're on mute.
questions.
You're on mute.
I just want to thank everybody too. Evan, I am so impressed. You're so young, but you're compassionate, and I
Yes.
hope you just keep doing this. You know, I'm really,
My plan.
I just am so impressed. I don't know how the Venezuelans, that was going to be one of my questions. Why is that status different? I know it is, but I don't know why. Maybe you can email me the answer.
Yeah.
And I just hope that we could do this again or have people, you know, and I wanted to say that the only reason people, when we help them through international rescue, the refugees, through the United Nations, it's because a group of wonderful people pay money, you know, for a year to find food and clothing, and they do everything for the people. It's like winning the refugee lottery when you get chosen not to just be for 3 months with international rescue or church world service. So, you know, many people here have contributed to RAMP, and they really won the lottery. You know, and they're wonderful people. And so, but the other people, it just brings you to tears what they're going through, you know.
Yeah.
But thank you all. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank you, Mary, and Carol, for your involvement with these issues, because you've helped bring this panel together for the program committee. Mary is a member of the program committee, and so is Leo Rogers. So thank you all for that.
And Katherynn, too, I just want to say,
Katherynn, yes.
because Katherynn is just a regular person. She's studying nursing, right, at Chamberlain University. She's a determined person to get her degree and be a wonderful nurse, which she already is. But she shows the compassion of a Christian, stopping on the road, helping that family. I can't even begin to tell you how she helped that family. So, like, there's an example for all of us of what, you know, the little things you do make a difference in someone's life. So, okay, I'm not going to say anymore.
I just like to, I just wanted to say, Erin, you did mention in the beginning that you were not happy with the church's work in this regard. And so I would like to kind of investigate that a little bit more. What is anything being done, or just Catholic Charities help anybody in any way? I just like to know whether there's any help coming from Catholic sources.
Yeah, Catholic Charities is amazing. They're really, really amazing. They do amazing work. They're incredibly underfunded. And the people that work there, yeah, I don't know how they are surviving, to be quite honest. They're very underfunded. And also Clinic, which I forget what Clinic stands for, but it's something Catholic. They are a wonderful immigration group that's connected with the church. I don't know how officially they're connected with the church. There's a couple of like Catholic based organizations that do research or do trainings and do some representation. And then throughout the country, there's other, you know, smaller nonprofits. I feel like the church as a whole has really not prioritized this. I feel like, you know, obviously in our church, we're all immigrants. And so it's a very welcoming environment. But I personally find, as I go to other churches in other parts of the state or in other parts of the country, the discourse, especially around election time, is we just have to focus on who's pro-choice, or sorry, who's pro-life, right? That's who we vote for. So if that's the former president, that's who we vote for, regardless of how he's talking about immigrants, regardless of how he treats immigrants, regardless of everything else. We are a one issue religion. That is all we care about. And everything else goes to the wayside. And that's really disappointing. And I heard from family members in other parts of this state that their parish priests before the election last time were encouraging their parishioners to vote for that candidate. Mm-hmm. And I just can't even imagine that a Catholic could vote for that person. It's so contrary to everything that we believe in. But he's pro-life. Well, he says he's pro-life. I'm sure he's paid for abortions, but it's fine. So like,
well, whatever will get him what he wants.
Right. It just, to me, I just find it really difficult to believe that there are actually parishes encouraging that, and the church isn't doing anything about it. And so for me, it's like two sides of the mouth, right? So you have the money for Catholic charities and all this, and that's wonderful, but then, you know, and I don't see a lot of churches opening their doors and welcoming people in and, you know, doing the kind of work that needs to be done to support people coming in. I mean, I'm not in New York City. I'm sure there are some great Catholic churches that are helping with the refugee crisis there, but I'm sure there's a lot that aren't. And so it's disappointing.
Well, there are churches here that put right here in East Orange that said that if it's a sin to vote for a candidate that is pro-choice, it's a sin.
Right. So what are you supposed to do with that? Right.
Yes, that's what they put it out on a piece of paper that it was a sin to vote for a candidate that was pro-life, pro-choice. Yeah. If the candidate was for abortion, it was a sin for you to vote for that candidate.
So start paying taxes if you're that church.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You want to politicize, then pay.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So do we want to continue or should I close the meeting?
We'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Yeah.
I think that's the best answer.
Yes, thank you.
I did put my
Okay.
email address in I'll put it again just so
Oh,
it's
that's
here.
good.
So people who didn't get their questions answered, feel free to
Good.
email me and I can follow up. And I would love to come back to you to answer Carol's question about unaccompanied children, because that's a whole nother population. That's who we represent, but it's another conversation for another day. So.
Okay. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Erin.
you,
Evan.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your generosity, Erin.
Right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.